Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be recapping our reviews for the month of May 2024. This video will feature three things: a discussion of our favorite coffee this month, as well as any honorable mentions, our upcoming coffee of the month, and anything else pertaining to this channel that we feel is worth discussing or addressing. So let's go ahead and get started with our honorable mentions. And as always, these are in order of when we reviewed them on this channel. And first up, we have the Juan Peña Wash Processed Ecuador from Flower Child out of Oakland, California. And this is by far my favorite Flower Child coffee that we've ever reviewed on this channel, as I found it to be the most intense experience I've had from them. And I've heard from so many people that it's been one of their favorite coffees of the entire year, and some have even reached out to us and asked if it was going to be a contender for one of our favorite coffees from the entirety of the year as well. And while I very much enjoyed this one, I feel like there are some other Mejorado coffees that we've had that I enjoyed a little bit more. That being said, massive credit to Flower Child on this one, as I really enjoyed their interpretation of this coffee. This one is unfortunately no longer available for purchase, and none of our honorable mentions or my favorite coffee this month, unfortunately, are still available for purchase. Next up, we have the Chuchi Wash Processed Peru from Coffea Circular out of Gothenburg, Sweden. And I've said in the past that I find Coffea Circular to be one of the best coffee roasters when it comes to standard offerings, as this one once again was just a standard Caturra wash processed Peruvian coffee, and that's what caught my interest about it, and it certainly did not disappoint, as I found so many of the wonderful qualities from their standard offerings to be present in this one, with such great sweetness and clarity as well, continuing to demonstrate why Coffea Circular is one of my favorite coffee roasters in the entire world. And I do continue to keep an eye out for their standard washed offerings as well. Next up, we have the Arashi Wash Processed Ecuador from H&S out of Laramie, Wyoming. And this was our second ever H&S coffee review, and this is a coffee that's been much discussed this year by a number of people, as some people felt like this was their favorite interpretation of Anabel Salinas coffee, and I can get on board with that as well, as I found there to be so many wonderful qualities about this coffee at its very best. Unfortunately for me, I did struggle a little bit with consistency issues on this coffee, and a lot of that had to do with the recipe that H&S has. And some people have commented about why H&S has the recipe the way that it is, and it's something that I might try to incorporate or work with in the future, having some more of their coffees. But this one right here, at its very best, as I kind of mentioned, was one of the more enjoyable experiences I've had from any Mejorado coffee this entire year. And for that reason, H&S is a coffee roaster that I do hope to revisit, and one that I personally feel like was a little snubbed within Roastful's Top 100 Coffee Roasters list. As mentioned, this one unfortunately is also no longer available, but I'm definitely keeping an eye out for what they might be releasing in the future. Next up, we have the Yone Mascara, the Wash Processed Columbia from Frukt out of Turku, Finland. And the feedback on this coffee was extremely positive, as a number of you guys also really enjoyed this coffee, as this is probably my favorite experience I've had from this coffee roaster, which is a coffee roaster a lot like its coffee, in the sense that the first couple of impressions I had from them may not have necessarily been the best, but the more and more I continue to try them, just like their coffees, the more and more I continue to enjoy them. And that was certainly the case with this one, though this one right from the start was a coffee that I very much enjoyed for a wonderful bit of sweetness and clarity right from the onset. One of the more consistent coffees I've had from them, as well as I feel like the really nice qualities of this one was present right at the start. A lot of red fruit characteristics, very reminiscent of some really enjoyable Kenyan coffees as well. So for that reason, I continue to keep an eye out for Frukt anytime I do see them at a multi-roaster or available to purchase. I'll at least take a look at what they might have to offer, because there are some coffees from them they've had in the past that I very much wanted to review, and it would not surprise me if we continue to review some more of their coffees here in the future. Massive credit to them on this one. I found this to be a very lovely Colombian, one of my favorite Colombian coffees of the year. And that takes us into my favorite coffee this month, and that is the Nueva Esperanza, the Wash Processed Ecuador from Subtext out of Toronto, Ontario. And this one right here was different from a lot of other Mejorado coffees that I've had this year. While it still offered plenty of the terrific sweetness to it, it offered this very interesting cherry soda-like aspect that is reminiscent of some other coffees that I have had in terms of Mejorados, but unique in its own sense, as it still offered that tremendous sweetness and slight candied aspect, as it's a little bit more rare relative to some of the other Mejorados that might skew a little bit just more in that brown candied sweet direction. I feel like the complement of the two aspects most dominant and present within this one, that cherry herbal-like aspect as well as that brown candied sweet component, made for a very fun and enjoyable experience with this coffee. And even with a varietal that's been standing out a lot over the last couple of years with me, the Mejorado, I feel like this one set itself apart and offered such a very enjoyable experience that it did end up being one of my favorite coffees this month, in a month that was filled with some really enjoyable coffees and a number of coffees from other coffee roasters that people have deemed to be their favorite coffee of the entire year. So massive credit to Subtext on this one. I mentioned as well in that top 100 coffee roasters list that Subtext for me feels a little underrated, as I did not know what to expect from them going into those reviews, but their coffees just continue to improve with more and more time. So they're definitely a coffee roaster that I'm hoping to revisit more here in the future, and they are going to be releasing some coffees I know that have caught my interest, so I'm really hoping that their version of the Abel Salinas is still around when I get an opportunity to purchase from them. All right, that takes us into our coffee of the month, which is the Rainbow EA Decaf Natural Processed Colombia from SNW. And this one right here obviously won our coffee of the month poll, which was a decaf poll. And a lot of this happened very quick because we'd received a number of requests from people asking us to do decaf. And to my surprise, not only did it completely dominate the poll by winning yes when we asked if you guys wanted it to be our coffee of the month, a decaf coffee, but in addition to that, it was also, I want to say, it was the runaway winner in one of our polls, and in the other poll, I mentioned that it was the September coffee, the Wilton Benitez. So when that decaf does return, we're going to purchase from them as well and review that one. But since this one got the majority of the votes between the two polls, it's the coffee that we opted to review. And I'm also going to be featuring it in a very interesting blind taste test rankings video that you guys should keep an eye out for, because I've actually already recorded that one and I found it to be a pretty interesting blind taste test rankings video, mostly because it's the first time we've ever featured a decaf coffee in one of those videos. So I'm curious to see how that turns out, but I'm, to be honest, not overly excited to be reviewing a decaf coffee, but I'm still kind of curious to see how it turns out, really hoping if there's something that I might be able to get from it that causes me to want to review more decaf coffees in the future. Definitely open to the idea, but we'll just see how this one turns out. And that takes us into our final thoughts on this, and it does go back to the Roastful's Top 100 Coffee Roasters list, as we did a live stream reaction to that article, which was very enjoyable, and I do want to thank everybody that was either in the live stream itself or has since gone back and watched the video, as it's done pretty well. And that does kind of lead to asking what is next, as we've received a number of requests for certain things, the first of which being a Q&A. And I have brought up a Q&A in a past monthly recap video, which it didn't seem to get a whole lot of feedback on, so I'm going to revisit that topic and ask if you guys want us to do a Q&A. I'm not entirely sure that a Q&A is ideal for a live stream, but I feel like it's something that we could do a very good job of reacting to any questions, posting on both YouTube and Instagram, asking for those questions, as I'm sure there are a number of questions that you guys are curious about that we could answer in hopefully a very sufficient manner, as opposed to just kind of responding through comments or just personal DMs. That way a lot of people can know. But as far as the live streams goes, it's not every day that Roastful does release a top 100 coffees in 2024 list. So that was kind of a spur of the moment thing, mostly because I didn't want to have that list spoiled for me, and I wanted to give a very genuine and live reaction in a short amount of time. So that's why we did that live stream. But once again, it turned out a lot more enjoyable than I was expecting. So I wanted to ask you guys if there's any sort of additional live streams that you think might be a really good idea. And one of the things that comes to mind is actually our Coffee of the Month polls, because I feel like it might be a very interesting thing to go through coffee ideas, coffee recommendations, and suggestions live with you guys as well. That way I can kind of give some feedback, maybe come up with a theme or a bunch of coffees with you guys as well that we can submit as our Coffee of the Month recommendations and suggestions. So let me know what you think of that, or if you have any other ideas for live streams as well. I'm sure the first one that's going to come up is like brewing coffee, and maybe at some point in the future, because I still don't necessarily have the setup to do that. I've seen other people that do. Obviously, I'm thinking of Brian, but I would say that my space isn't necessarily set up for something like that, as I'm kind of looking at the setup, but that's something maybe we could revisit in the future. But if you do have any other ideas for live streams, if you have any other articles or things that you think are worth reacting to, then just let us know, and I will do my best to take care of those as well. But I'm going to leave this recap at that. As I would say, if you guys enjoy the video, give this one a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a recap of our reviews in the month of May 2024. Thank you for watching.